It's fantasy football draft season, folks, and today we're going to be talking about some more must-have players. Now, we know that most of the must-have players we talk about are going early. So today, myself and Donkey Teeth are going to break down some middle-round must-have players that you need to draft in round 6 through 10. Before we do, we want to make sure you're following us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. And also check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify over at Razzball Fantasy. Also, make sure you go to razzball.com, folks. We are in full fantasy football draft mode. We have great tools and resources you need to win your fantasy league. We have ADP price tool. We have a team name generator. We have a trade analyzer. And of course, we have a bunch of great articles coming out from all our great writers on razzball.com. But also make sure you're checking out razzball.com for baseball, basketball, and hockey. Without further ado, let's start the show. All right, Mr. Teeth, welcome back to the show. What's going on, man?
What's happening, Bobby? It is draft season, full gear, man. The home leagues are starting up. That's when you know what's happening.
Oh yeah, and today's show. Listen, we've heard the people have heard. We were listening. Must have players is a hit. We want to know the hot takes. We also want to know who we have to get early on to win our fantasy leagues, but sometimes we want to be searching a little deeper. Today, we're going to take a look at the middle round breakouts, must-have players going in round 6 through 10. Now, before we start the show, DT, tell me a little bit about your philosophy. I know you're not the type of guy that likes to throw out must-have in these rounds, but what are you typically looking for in the round 6 through 10?
Yeah, well, you know, Bobby, I'm pretty flexible-minded, so it really depends on how I've built my roster in the early rounds and kind of what fell in my lap there. That's going to depend on what I'm taking these rounds. So yeah, must have is kind of a misnomer for me, but I think as you get into the later rounds, there are players that I'm going to say, oh, I'm definitely taking this. There's certain players, and I'll just throw Romeo Dubs out there, for instance, where he's going to end up on my team. You know, I'm going to take him 3 rounds before ADP because he's going so late. Nobody else is going to take him before me. So there's must-have players for me in that sense. But yeah, in rounds 1 through 6, 7, I think that's it's tough to call anybody must-have, right?
I don't know, DT. I think some of the guys we're talking about today are going to be really excited about. Let's get into it. First off, we're starting in a 12-team league. This is basically me and DT typically look at half point to full point PPR, single QB leagues, just so you know. And we're basing a lot of this off of our Razzball ADP that you can find on razzball.com. Today, the first round we're going to talk about is round 6. So essentially pick 60 when you're at that turn through pick 72. But if you want to reach up and grab a player that's going in the 7th and 8th because he's a must-have player, you can take him in the 6th. So DT, basically going after pick 60, who's kind of that must-have player you think you should grab?
Yeah, so let me just tack on one other comment here before we dive in. I think in auction leagues, must-have is, well, first of all, auction leagues, they're the way that you should play fantasy football, in my opinion. And you can have must-have players there, because it's I'm going to spend the money versus a snake draft. A lot of it gets put on what draft position. I mean, if you got a first-round must-have player, you better have the number 1 pick. But yeah, let's dive in on these players, Bobby. Juju Smith-Schuster is my must-have for the 6th round. And I mean, I think it's kind of self-evident here. Patrick Mahomes has got to throw to somebody now that Tyreek Hill is out of town. And I think this is that kind of narrative where Juju Smith-Schuster has this resurgence in his career. It feels like it's going to happen to me. So I'm going to take at this stage in the draft, the upside of the potential number 1 wide receiver in Kansas City is so high. I have a hard time not taking a shot on Juju if he's there around this pick.
I was surprised when I did some of my research on Patrick Mahomes versus a Ben Roethlisberger. I know it's obviously the clear an upgrade. It's a big-time upgrade. We know that. But it's also where on the field. So Patrick Mahomes actually targets the slot about 10% higher than Ben Roethlisberger has done over the last 5 years or so. Plus his DVOA, which essentially from Football Outsiders, his efficiency throw to the slot is insanely higher. Patrick Mahomes is a better slot thrower. He throws more to the slot. I actually had Juju marked down here as well, so I agree 1,000%. He's the pick if you're at 60 and he is there. However, I want to just take an alternative route here. And I want to talk a little bit about Adam Thielen. And I think a lot of people are super excited about Justin Jefferson, the new offense, Kevin O'Connell coming from the Rams. And there's talks of Justin Jefferson being the number one pick in fantasy in some cases, which whether I agree or disagree is irrelevant. But another player that's going to benefit from this new philosophy is Adam Thielen. And Adam Thielen, yes, he got banged up last year, and I totally get that. But just to take a step back and think about it, the guy was wide receiver 15 in points per game last year in PPR. So he's a top 15 receiver just last season for this team. And now he's an afterthought. He got banged up. No one wants him. But this offensive coaching staff has already said that they are going to feature Adam Thielen in the red zone because he just has a way about him similar to a guy like Davante Adams in the red zone. So there's been talks that Adam Thielen is going to be the focal point in the red zone along with Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, of course. But I just think that at this point in the draft, there's not a lot of guys that you could really hang your hat on that's proven year in and year out to be a top 20 receiver on a per game basis. And there's a little downside now because if you're taking him in the 6th round, I don't think you need to, even if he only plays 12 games, if he's giving you top 20 numbers in that game, you already got your money's worth, I feel like, in that 6th round. So that's why I'm going to say Adam Thielen is my must-have player going in the 6th round. Let's jump down to the 7th round, DT. Talk to us a little bit about the player you want to talk about here.
Yeah, so I actually ended up swapping my 7th and 8th rounders because of recent movements in ADP. So, I don't love the value as much here on my 7th rounder, Christian Kirk. And you can actually get him a little bit later if you're drafting on a site like the NFC, the NFFC, National Fantasy Football Championship. He's going around ADP 90 over the past month. But I really do like taking Christian Kirk. I like to invest in guys that franchises have invested heavily in. And, the Jaguars, they just paid Christian Kirk an insane amount of money. They believe in him. So they're going to use him, right? And you got a really exciting young quarterback and not a ton of competition. So he's going to get peppered as long as Kirk is healthy. I mean, we expect Trevor Lawrence to take a big leap forward in year 2. This could be a huge season for Christian Kirk. And if you can get him round 7, round 8, I love that.
Yeah, man. I actually have him on my list too. I think it's just, if you saw that game last week with Kirk, they funneled targets towards him on the field. Trevor Lawrence, by the way, I know this is annoying for a lot of people, but remember Jamal Agnew was a thing for a couple weeks? You know why? Because he was the slot receiver. Like Trevor Lawrence, for some reason, was looking a lot better, looking towards the middle of the field. Guys, tight ends like James O'Shaughnessy were having a little moments last year, so I love this pick as well. My guy is actually Dameon Pierce. It's kind of being proactive a little bit in the sense that his stock is screaming up, and it's trying to figure out when is the time to pull the trigger. I think if you have an early 7th round pick 72 and 73, he is not going to make it back to you in that range. And the kid has looked really, really good. He looks like he's probably going to earn the starting job for the Houston Texans. And now the Houston Texans offense, there's a lot of question marks. How good is Davis Mills really going to be in year 2? Outside of Brandon Cooks, is Nico Collins ready to take a step? Who's the tight end on the team? How good is this offensive line? They're middle of the pack technically, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of question marks. But the thing with Pierce is not only has he looked good on the field, but Pep Hamilton has a history of getting a lot decent seasons out of his running backs. If you go back to his days with the Colts, Frank Gore, by the way, Frank Gore just chilling in his 30s, had a top 12 season under Pep Hamilton. He also had guys like Amon Bradshaw come in and have a top 24 season with Pep Hamilton. So he has utilized a workhorse back in the past with the Colts. So I do think that Pierce has earned that job, which is why I kind of want to take a shot at him in the 7th round because it's kind of still after the dead zone. I have a feeling, though, this guy might be going in like the 5th, 6th round and probably by end of next week. Let's jump down to round 8, DT. Who's your guy?
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree on Pierce. And if you can get him in the 7th, I'm with you. I mean, it's all about like when draft seasons kick into full gear and this guy's a starting running back. I mean, and it appears that he is over Marlon Mack. And Rex Burkhead. So I'm with you, and I do think that he jumps up a lot. But I might be willing to take him in the 5th even if you've got to. So But yeah, my next guy is Miles Sanders. I know we're both on the Miles Sanders bandwagon. I've always been on the Miles Sanders bandwagon. So I'm going to keep doubling down. And he was my 7th rounder, and he's fallen even further. So what the hell in the 8th round? I mean, I'll probably take him in the 7th. Just because I'm the biggest Miles Sanders fan around. But
I like that though, Miles Fander. I like it.
Miles Fander, yeah, I'm Miles Fander. So you're in too, right?
Yeah. I like Sanders too, especially because he keeps falling. However, I do have another running back that I'd rather have here, and it's Devin Singletary. So one of the things we just talked about in one of our recent shows was how to avoid drafting a bust in fantasy football. If you haven't heard that, go check those out. One of them was the running back episode. There's a couple qualifiers that you want to find in your running back. Number one, does he have a top 10 quarterback at ADP? Devin Singletary, check. Does he have a top 20 PFF offensive line? The Bills have that, check. The other things that are huge factors are ADP. Right now, today, he's going in the 8th round. That's not only after the dead zone, but that makes it an ambiguous backfield, meaning there is no starting running back on the team drafted in the first top 50 picks. So right there, he checks all these boxes. On top of the fact that, listen, James Cook, we like the fact that he might be, potentially a passing down back. But to be honest with you, I just feel like if something were to happen to Devin Singletary, I think this is a Leonard Fournette situation like last year, where if Fournette went down, they would use a combination of Jones on early downs and Gio in passing game. I think if this team, if Singletary goes down, to use Zach Moss as an early down grinder and James Cook in the passing game. I think Devin Singletary is the guy. And listen, look at the stretch down the stretch last year. He had monster games, not only towards the end of the year, but in the playoffs as well. So I think that's why I want to take a shot in the 8th round on Devin Singletary. Let's jump down to round 9. DT, who do you got?
Hey, we got a question from the audience. Should we hit that real quick?
Let's do it. I love it, folks. First off, we haven't really had that many live on-air questions and comments. And this is a great segue to this. Starting this season, Razzball Fantasy will be hosting a Sunday live show, starts and sits. Come join us about 2 hours before kickoff. Every single Sunday, we're going to be doing it. You can put all your start-sit questions in. Myself and the rest of the Razzball team will be on there. So make sure you're doing it. So let's get to this. So it's Axis Myth X. I think that's how you say it. Thanks you for watching. I received DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Dalton Schultz, and he gets Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. This is a good trade for me. 8-man PPR. DT, quick first thoughts.
Well, first thoughts. I mean, 8-team PPR is just a massive wrinkle for any question. So you're talking super shallow league where tight end could be a huge differentiator, and you can find really good wide receivers and running backs on the wire too. That said, I still have a really hard time passing on getting DK Metcalf and AJ Brown in this deal. But I think it ends up being fair. Like if we're talking 12-team league or 14-team league or something like that, like it's obvious you're taking DK Metcalf and AJ Brown. In an 8-team league, I mean, there's an argument for either side here. So you're downgrading your starting tight end from Mark Andrews to Dalton Schultz. You're upgrading. I don't even know if Rashad Bateman's probably not even starting on your team. You may not start him the entire season. And heck, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown might not be starters for you, to be honest, depending on, I mean, if you start 2 wide receivers, you're probably starting 3 in an 8-team league, I would hope. You're only talking about 8 times 24, the top 24 wide receivers starting until you hit bye week. So yeah, you're probably starting DK and AJ Brown, but this is very team specific question, and you almost need to see the entire roster, right, Bobby?
Oh, absolutely. But the other thing is, in a vacuum, I'd rather have Schultz and AJ Brown versus Mark Andrews or Rashad Bateman. So I'm actually going to go on and throw in DK Metcalf. Maybe things click with Geno. I'll take that upside all day. Give me those 3 versus those 2 guys right there. Let's jump down to round 9. DT, tell us what you got.
Who do I have for round 9? I've got Chris Olave. Now, again, moving target here with where these guys are going. In the last 30 days at NFFC, he's going around pick 105. I love the upside. I really like a lot of these rookie wide receivers. You know, I'm all about George Pickens and Romeo Doubs, as I said before. But Olave with Jameis, we know he's going to throw a lot. You got Michael Thomas there, obviously, but I think Olave is going to slide in very seamlessly into this offense and is going to surprise a lot of people with his rookie season. So I want him on my teams, especially if I can get him that late in the draft.
So in round 9, I just at this point so my philosophy has changed over the last few years, and I have avoided drafting too many running backs early. I typically get two. In some cases, I'm okay with one, and a lot of the reasons are like guys like Singletary, Miles Sanders now are going in the 8th, 9th round, and another player I honestly think is worth a shot is Cordarelle Patterson. Like, so when you're watching these games, first of all, in the preseason, Cordarelle Patterson barely played in the preseason. Totally understand that. But they basically all off season talked about like they're saving him for the season. They're saving him for the season. Cordarelle Patterson last year, before like the weird last 4 weeks or so of the season, was an RB1. Not like a top 25 running back. We're talking top 10 running back for fantasy football for double-digit weeks during the season last year on this team. And in the 9th round at this point, all the risk is gone. And now you're just like, oh, what if they just go back to giving him all the work again? And they obviously could. Listen, outside of Drake London and Kyle Pitts, there's a lot of question marks in the receiving core. So you could see him getting some passing game work still as the starting running back here. But the other things that kind of get me excited about Patterson are the fact that Tyler Algier, 5th round pick, is the first guy. Dameon Williams is the other backup that is on this team. Are you kidding me? Like, how many times is 5th round picks typically at the running back position are just as likely to not make the team that become a workhorse back in the NFL? And Dameon Williams, like, really? Those are the guys we're worried about for Cordarelle Patterson? Like, in an ideal world, if I said to you, hey, I got this guy who basically was a top 12 running back, and they brought in a 5th round pick and Dameon Williams, are you still excited about him? And every person in the world just went, nah, not really. Just screw it. Just let them draft the fall to the 9th. I just, for some reason, at this stage in the draft, take Cordarelle Patterson because even if he doesn't do well, it doesn't matter because at the 9th round, there is zero risk with that pick. All right, let's jump down to the last one, DT. It's round 10. Who do you got there for us?
Well, again, I agree with your call on Cordarelle. I mean, to be able to get a guy that was a top 10 running back last year that late in the draft is just stupid. I mean, you can take the shot there and get nothing out of him, and still it was worth it. It was the right process. So I'm with you there, especially, and that's where it comes down to did I need wide receiver or running back at that stage in the draft? And if all things are equal, yeah, maybe I do go Cordarelle. But my 10th rounder is Chase Claypool. We've talked about it quite a bit this preseason, but I'm all about the Steelers, and I don't think that I just think that they're getting disrespected. Their entire offense is getting disrespected just because of Mitch Trubisky. Even if Mitch Trubisky is below average league quarterback, which he probably will be, he hasn't shown a whole lot to make us think that he's going to be. But I'm betting on the system. I'm betting on the coaching staff. I'm betting on the Steelers, and I think Chase Claypool in the 10th round is a ridiculous value.
Yeah, just a quick update. So we're talking a little bit about the trade from earlier from Axis Myth. He has Keenan Allen, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, and Terry McLaurin. So this is kind of what we were talking about with me and DT. DT said you might not even start Bateman, and that's the fact right there. Because like you have those receivers, so that's a very good point. When you guys submit these kind of questions, feel free to give us that detail. It will definitely help us make a more sound decision. My round 10 players are now guys that are currently rising. Brian Robinson and Michael Carter. And I know I'm cheating on you, DT. I'm sorry, but there's just two guys I just wanted to bring up. Michael Carter, someone, I think it was Josh Norris, I believe, and a couple other people have brought up the fact that the situation for the Jets is starting to sound like the Denver Broncos from last year, where Javonte Williams is the hot young name going extremely early, but all the writing on the wall was it's going to be a split. Melvin Gordon's going to be a thing. Well, sure enough, the better pick for fantasy was Melvin Gordon because you got him in the 8th, 9th round last year versus Javonte going in the 5th. This is something that sounds very similar to the Jets. Breece Hall, 4th, 5th round pick now. Michael Carter, you can get in the double-digit rounds. He's worth a flyer. However, my must-have player is Brian Robinson. So Antonio Gibson, I think we could honestly say he's returning kicks now. How many starting running backs in the NFL return kicks? I'm going to go with 0. I think there's not a lot of guys right now today at starting running backs going to return kicks. That's what Ron Vera is already saying. The other thing about this too is Antonio Gibson. Listen, he was a unfinished product. He wasn't even a running back in college. So this idea that he transitioned to the running back position in the NFL sounded nice. but he never had the feel of a running back. He didn't have the vision. He doesn't have the cutback ability. A lot of people talk about that he's a straight line speedster. He's explosive. But for running backs, it doesn't matter north and south as much as the east and west as well. So if you don't have that lateral cuts, that one cut and hit the hole, you're not going to do it. And it's kind of just gotten to that point where it sounds like Brian Robinson is going to be that guy. He comes from Alabama. The Alabama running backs have a lot of success from, I know like Mark Ingram to, Derrick Henry, etc. But at the same time, I think Brian Robinson, for me at this point, is in the 10th round. Just draft him, because like we just talked about with Cordarelle Patterson, in this range, if they don't work out, you have 8-9 other picks that you've already taken that work out. It won't even matter. But the upside for him is a top 24 back in this offense, because you have Carson Wentz, who should provide stability at quarterback. You have a good offensive scheme with Scott Turner. So I think that at this point in the draft, you should take a shot. Let me just put you on the spot, DT. Michael Carter or Brian Robinson in this range?
Yeah, well, actually, Brian Robinson, he really is a must-draft player in my book, because I'm not buying the Antonio Gibson stuff, and I'm going to draft him, and I really need to have Brian Robinson in case I'm wrong there, which is possible. Right. Antonio Gibson he's in the doghouse. There's no two ways about it, and that's why he's returning kicks, and Brian Robinson is starting ahead of him. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that it's going to be Brian Robinson, but it's possible. So I think it is Antonio Gibson still. I'm still going to take the discount on him, but I sure as hell I'm going to make sure Brian Robinson is on my team in case I'm wrong.
But now, so this is the thing too about the strategy we talked about. Now this is an ambiguous backfield, because Antonio Gibson's no longer going in the top 50 anymore. And actually, let me just, for the sake of the podcast, they're not available yet on Razzball.com, but I just updated them internally. And Gibson right now today is going, 85th right now, according to what I put together on NFC, Best Ball 10s, and Underdog. He's going 85th overall now. So you could essentially take, Gibson at your eighth round, and then take Robinson in the 10th, and just see who it ends up being. And if it ends up being a wash, like I said before, that's not that much draft capital to lose if it ended up being a wash between the two with JD McKissic. All right, that's all we got for today, folks. Once again, this is another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube. Subscribe, rate, leave a comment. Make sure you're also going to IG and TikTok at Razzball Fantasy. And, of course, make sure you go to Razzball.com to check out all the latest articles and tools you need to win your fantasy league. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. You can follow me at Bobby LaMarco on Twitter. For my co-host today, Donkey Teeth, you can follow him at Donkey Teeth 87. We are out of here.